And now we're live. Hi, Lorraine.
Welcome, welcome. So excited for tonight. As you guys can see on the screen, Molly and I will be talking tonight about how to support parents and teens in developing their confidence. And we are really excited to partner together today to have this opportunity for both of us to share our experiences. So we've got Molly, who is a parent coach, and we've got Lorraine, who is a leadership coach. And Molly, would you maybe switch to the next page where we can share our
Absolutely.
socials? Because right now, while we are getting set up and talking with you, we'd love for you to connect with us on any one of these social media platforms because what we really like to do is share content on our social media platforms. So maybe if we don't talk about something tonight, something else that we share later might be really, really helpful and beneficial to you. And so the more you follow us, the more you'll see some of the content that we have to share. But tonight, we are going to focus on teen and parent confidence. And what we're going to focus that conversation on is the comfort circles. And so, Molly, do you know
I
these
got it.
comfort circle, these zones? Do
You
you
know,
have any knowledge about them?
I don't know a whole lot about them. I know that people talk a lot about, being in your comfort zone and stepping out of your comfort zone. However, I'm not real familiar with how we do that and how I see that you have three different spots on this graphic here, and I'm not real familiar with how we go about doing that. If you are watching this right now and you can see us, will you just hit a quick like or a quick comment so we can see that we are live in a variety of places? That would be lovely. But yes, no, Lorraine, I hear people say, get out of your comfort zone.
Yes.
And I'm
Yes.
like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, and I am really excited to be able to share this image with people because, like you, Molly, I don't think a lot of people know these different zones. And when
Mm.
we say step outside of your comfort zone, like, could that mean that you're actually stepping way outside into your panic zone? Or is there a method or a process that allows you to just take little steps and not necessarily have to jump and leap way out of your comfort zone?
That's the
So,
thing. Whenever I think about getting out of my
yes.
comfort zone, I go into panicky feeling.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. I'm
Yeah.
so glad we were talking with you because you know about how to guide people through some of those smaller steps.
Yeah, and like I focus mainly on supporting teens, but
Mm,
when a teen steps outside of their comfort zone or is encouraged to step outside of their comfort zone, they need a support system. And I am curious how you might be sharing some knowledge about, like, as a parent, what am I supposed to do? How do I help my kids step outside of their comfort zone? Those kind of skills. So can you go
oh,
into a little bit about what you're going to talk about?
yeah, absolutely. Yes, so many of us parents feel really we look at our children and we look at what they're doing and or what they're not doing, and we get tied up emotionally in, oh my gosh, they're not stepping out, they're not doing these things. And things have been really hard the past couple of years, and I do find that in my parent coaching we have conversations about how to support our children in feeling more confident and leaning into the spots in their lives that are a little bit nervous, things they may not have had opportunities to do much of in the past couple years, and then how do we as a parents support that without putting our own sort of emotional judgment on it? Because have any of you noticed, especially with teenagers, that when our judgment comes at the teenagers, they push back? Has anyone else noticed that? So I am going to be talking about, as Lorraine shares her knowledge, I'm going to be kind of translating that into, okay, how can we best support our teens in evolving out more into the world? So, Lorraine, are you ready to go on to the next topic? Oh, I think do we get to just introduce ourselves officially now?
Yes,
Great.
yes. So if you will sort of start
Okay. Are
and
you,
give us a little bio about who Molly is and why Molly is here to share about this
absolutely.
information.
Absolutely. I am Molly Feigl of Molly Feigl Parenting Support dot com dot com. I'm sorry, was that I should not have sung that. That's somebody else's, music, right? I am a certified parent coach. I have taught elementary music for 20 years. I have spent time with teenagers in the woods at a summer camp for 30 years. We just figured out this summer it's been about 30 years. I have two of my own teenagers, a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old. So, those of you watching who are here because the title said teens, I am right there with you. We are in the same place right now. And I became a parent coach because after 20 years of watching students within the school system and trying to help them within the system, I started recognizing that it's really hard to make a difference from within the system. So I'm bypassing the system and going straight to the change makers in the home because we parents, oh, hey, someone gave us a thumbs up. Was that you, Lorraine? Did you give us a thumbs up?
Of
You
course
get
it
me so
was.
excited when you give me a thumbs up and I'm like, someone's watching. Oh, it's just Lorraine. We parents actually can help change our children's brain chemistry for the better
Mm,
and affect how they develop, especially right now in this teenage time when all these synapses are growing and neurons are firing and things are happening. So, in brief, that's what I do, and that's why I'm here. One of the reasons I'm here is there is absolutely almost an epidemic of anxiety and nervousness and things. And I can talk more about that after you've spoken, Lorraine, because
yeah.
I got my finger on the pulse of a bunch of people who work with kids. So,
Yeah.
Lorraine, who are you?
So
What do you do?
so so it's really cool that Molly and I both come from an education background. I spent 20 years in the classroom, and at that time I was teaching chemistry of all subjects. Um, and then I transitioned to a leadership position with teens. And I realized really quickly that this was an inequitable program. It wasn't
Mm,
available for all students. And why not? Why not give these valuable skills, life skills to every student, regardless of
absolutely.
their background and their capabilities? So I left teaching. I started my business in 2020, but I left teaching last June to really pursue the ability to give every student that is interested an opportunity to learn leadership skills because leadership is very much like basketball or baseball or
Mm,
volleyball. You can develop those skills with practice and a coach and a team of people. And I just think that that's so exciting. And I want to be able to offer that to every kid everywhere who wants to learn and not just a few privileged students in an individual high school.
love it. Love
So,
it. So let's dive into the stuff we're talking about.
yeah.
Um, why do we think it's important that we're bringing this forward?
Yes.
So I've been able to work with a summer camp over this past summer, and I've been talking over the past 2 years now with the staff at this summer camp. And they have never seen so many anxious kids and homesick kids as they did these past 2 summers.
Mm.
And um, also, youth, when I say kids, I also mean
I know.
teenagers.
Yeah.
Um, but they're also noticing that the youth are arriving at camp and kind of they're no longer in a comfortable place. Like this camp that I
Yes.
work at, it's in the woods and it's a language immersion camp. So people are speaking French at them. So talk
Ooh,
about getting out of your comfort zone, right? Children
yes.
are just like, "What's happening?" And typically the staff is able to, you know, get them comfortable and just sort of they ease in and they have this life-changing experience as
Yeah,
teenagers or preteens. And they're noticing that it is harder to ease them in, that
yeah,
it's just absolutely off the charts. And there are other places that I have noticed. I remember hearing on National Public Radio recently that there is almost this epidemic of anxiety and mental health issues. So
yeah.
that's one of the reasons why Lorraine and I decided we really wanted to talk about this tonight.
Yeah, and can
So,
you put the
mhm,
image of the comfort circle back up?
oh,
Because I
of course.
also think what is really important about this conversation is that we learn common language,
Mm,
right? So often we're seeing that post of step outside your comfort zone. And well, what's outside of my comfort zone? I know it's probably something that is hard for me to do, but how hard does it have to be for me to step outside my comfort zone? So one of the tools, remember we said that we were going to promise some tools. One of the tools is just having common language, right? So
mm,
if I'm saying so and so child of mine, step outside of your comfort zone, take a risk, right? My kid is going to be like, what does that even mean, mom? Like, why are you telling me to do this? Right.
right.
So, the thing that I want, and this is what I do in my workshops with my students who are interested in learning leadership, that first introductory workshop is we talk about these comfort zone, challenge zone, panic zones. And
Mm,
the one thing that's really, really important is that if you are feeling super safe and comfortable, then you're not learning, you're not changing, you're not growing. But the same thing is true if you go so far out of your comfort zone that you're in, and I know Molly's going to talk a little bit more about this, but if you're in that panic zone where you're in that fight or flight mode, you're not learning there either because your body is really focused on security, safety, and preserving all things of the body. And so, somewhere in between that safe zone and that anxiety, panic zone is what's called the challenge zone. And if you just move slightly outside of your comfort zone and you take even a step and you're standing on the line between comfort and challenge, you are learning, you are growing, you are changing. And if you take a giant leap, but you're still standing on the line of the challenge zone, you're not so far into that panic zone. But what the challenge is that we believe because of social media, because of peer pressure, is that if we step outside that safety zone and that comfort zone, then we are automatically in our panic zone. And if we don't know that there's a middle ground, and that middle ground can be really wide for some people, it doesn't have to be as wide, but it can be really wide for a lot of people, is there is a middle ground and we don't have to go right into anxiety. And we have to know that it is uncomfortable to step outside of our
mm,
comfort zone. And if we don't know the difference between discomfort and anxiety, then we assume if I'm stepping outside of my comfort zone, I am in my panic zone because I don't know what that feels like to have a little bit of discomfort. So, using common language, things like, hey, how was your day today? Did you spend most of your day in your comfort zone or did you spend most of your day in your panic zone? And having that type of conversation with your son or daughter or child is very different than how was your day today? Or did you step outside of your comfort zone, right? It's a little less accusatory, it opens
absolutely.
the conversation up, it gives you a lot more entry points, and
Absolutely.
It's so important to make sure that we are modeling our own ability to step outside our comfort zone. So I love when when people post step outside your comfort zone, but they themselves are not demonstrating how they are stepping outside
Hmm.
of the comfort zone. So I think those are really key points in observing and talking about the comfort zone. So I'm going to toss it over to you now
Yeah,
to talk
please.
a
I've got
little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I would great to take I would love to take it from here. I just want to underline something that you said.
Mm,
Just having the common language and the common definition of these three different circles, um, it allows youth and adults, and I'm saying youth and adults because I've worked with camp counselors, I work with, pre-K teachers, I whatever. It allows parents and kids, youth and adults, to communicate and connect in
mm,
this non threatening, more easy, comfortable way. Um, so, just that, having that common language and having these three circles to sort of guide those conversations. Also, recognizing, you mentioned, recognizing that discomfort and anxiety are two different things.
yes,
Um,
yes.
So, yeah, just defining that. I love the idea of having that common language and how then everyone kind of knows what we're talking about. I would love to talk a little bit about brain chemistry and stress real quickly, speaking of common language, so that everyone watching this understands a couple basic things. When we are trying to step out of our comfort zone and we're starting to feel a little bit stressed, we have this, our brain goes, oh no, I don't feel comfortable. I'm feeling stressed. That then the brain sends a message to the glands. This is a gland, if you've never seen one, to the glands to send out these stress hormones, chemicals like adrenaline and cortisol and things like that. Those create body wide changes. Changes like the heart rate goes faster, the lungs are working harder. It's that whole like the tiger's coming to eat me thing. That's all happening. Now, those body wide changes, in turn, they send a message to the brain, oh my gosh, something's wrong. And it restarts the stress cycle. So there's this circle of the stress reaction in our body. Now, the body wide changes, as I move my little dot around this, the body wide changes turn into behavior we see. That's the fight, flight, or freeze. The amygdala, which is, hold on, I'm going to get real close to myself for a minute. Here we go. Oh, no, I'm not. The amygdala, which is buried deep at our brainstem, that is in charge of survival. That is in charge of instinctual things, but not like heart rate and breathing. That's in charge of like, will I survive? And so that part of the brain is the part that sort of goes on fire, like my visual, goes on fire, and then starts sending out those messages. It's like survival. All right. So that's where we get our fight, flight, and freeze. And as we step out of our comfort zone, I'm understanding now that if we go too far, too fast, we hit panic zone. And that's where you were saying that too much, we're not learning. Something really interesting that happens when your amygdala is on fire like that. Like, oh my gosh, something too much is happening. The prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain that is in charge of logic and attuned communication, like communicating clearly with people and consequences, things like that, this turns off. So the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex are not on at the same time. Is that
Hmm.
a little bit of an exaggeration? Yes, but it's good for us to remember that. So when we see fight, flight, or freeze, here are, if you can read this, it's a little small. Here are a couple of things that you might see, we might see in our children. I have definitely seen a couple things on this list in my own household as my children, I've got a 12 and a 15-year-old, and they're moving out into the world and doing things. And sometimes they're like, nope, we're not doing it. So when you see these things, these behaviors from our children, keep in mind that it is a body-based response to stress. And I love that we can start talking about, okay, I see you're a little too far into it. Let's back off and find some different steps. So the one thing I want us
Molly, can I
go.
ask you a question?
Yeah.
If we are you like trying to talk about it with our
Mhm.
kids and
Yeah.
they're in fight, flight, or freeze, like
Yep.
what are the modalities
Yep.
to
What do
talk
we do?
about it?
Yep. Great. Number one, I'm glad I had this slide ready. Number one, as the adults, consider the behavior you're seeing as just a symptom. What that means is don't react crazy. Okay.
Mm,
Hold on. I'm gonna just get us again because we don't need to look at things for a while. So you notice a response from your children that you don't want to see.
mm,
For example, my daughter, she doesn't like to be in big groups of people. Not anymore. And yesterday we went to a party. It was mostly adults. She literally sat in the corner, like practically behind a friend's chair, just in a kind of a little ball watching the world. I started to have a reaction. I started to be like I could feel it in me. And then I thought, whoa, okay, Molly, calm yourself down. What you're
mm,
seeing is not a reflection of yourself. What you're seeing is that she's having a hard time right now. Our kids aren't giving us a hard time, they're having a hard time. So,
mm,
when you're in the home and you're starting to have a conversation with your kid about stepping out, doing something that's a little scary, number one, pick a time when you are connected, calm, and happy. Pick a time when they're not anywhere near that panic zone, because that's when this is not working, right? This is not working. So pick a time when this is turned on. The amygdala is saying, hey, we're good. Everything's happy. Maybe you're sitting on the couch watching anime together, right? Pause the anime show. Do you watch anime? No, no, not off topic. Pause the anime show. Um, and that's when their brain might be ready for some gentle conversations. So state something that you've noticed, like you're reporting on it. Hey, last night when we were at that party, I saw you really pull back into the corner. And then stop talking, parents. Stop talking and see what they say. See what comes from them. And try to keep your own feelings out of it. You don't say, it may be really uncomfortable that you are not talking to everybody. Just, hey, I notice when we talk about you going to summer camp, you really start to freak out about it. And then be silent. People are afraid of silence. Let that silence sit there and see if the children start to open up to you. Or you could say, I understand when I go out to things, sometimes I feel like a little bit like everyone's looking at me. Um, is that what I was seeing in you, or do I have it wrong? Did I get that right? So start asking questions
mm.
instead of saying, you looked scared. What was wrong with
Yes.
you?
I
And
actually think that that's really a really valid point because do you find that parents tend to label their kids?
oh yeah. Oh,
So,
my gosh. Yes. What
okay.
do the teenagers notice that they're being labeled? Do they feel like they're being labeled? The ones you
Mhm.
work with?
Yeah.
Can you Are you willing to talk about that for a minute?
Well, I think when I label
Mm,
someone or my child as something, right?
mhm.
Here is X. He's my shy kid. Or I don't think you should, or I'm curious about why you didn't volunteer for this activity. Is it because you are so shy, right?
Mm.
You don't embody shy characteristics. You are shy. So tell me a little bit about like when you were saying ask questions.
Yes. Yes. Um, Sorry, I just noticed some things pop up. We can come to that in a little bit. Um, and it popped up 3 times, which is a little weird.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
a little weird, but that's okay. Asking questions, especially with teenagers. Asking questions is a really powerful tool. And using the words, I trust you to tell me how you're feeling about that.
Mm,
Or asking open ended questions, such as, hold on, I just blanked on something. Um, such as, how would you like us to help you with this?
mm. Or
How
would
would,
you or would
right.
you
Oh
like
my gosh,
any
yes.
support?
Oh my gosh, yes. Would you like me to sit by you while you're feeling, however you're feeling, or would you prefer to be left alone?
Mm,
Giving two choices, that's a teacher trick. Giving two
yes.
choices is really, really powerful. Yeah, Lorraine's like, uh-huh, yep. Um, yeah, uh, you're really upset right now. Would you like me to stay with you? And or would you like to be left alone? I want to be
Mm,
left alone. I want to be left alone. Have you ever had your kids screaming at you? Right. Um, Great. I can see how upset you are right now. And uh, I trust you I trust that you have everything you need to get, to just let it run its course. I'll be here when you're ready, or I'll check on you in a few minutes. You're not alone in this.
mm.
So asking questions, how are you? I love the I love asking permission. If I guess how you're feeling right now, will you tell me if I'm right or wrong?
Yeah, I
Because
guess
sometimes they can't even tell us how they feel.
well, that's what
Sometimes
I was just gonna say, like,
right.
from the teen perspective, I think
Mhm.
oftentimes they don't actually know, and I did this really fun activity, actually, I wanna just take a bit aside. I
Please,
did
please.
this improv, sort of, what's it called when you act things out? Charades. I did
Mhm.
this charade game with a group of teenagers, and I gave them emotions to act out, and wouldn't you know, it was really hard for them to guess the right emotion because so many emotions look the same in body
Right.
language. So if
It
I, as a parent, am trying to guess your emotion, chances are I'm going to guess wrong.
so here's the thing, parents, when you're dealing with a child, here's big nugget. When you're dealing with a child who is, you're trying to get out of their comfort zone, and we'll
Mhm.
get more into some of those little steps you can take. But you have a relaxed conversation with them during a time where they're not in their panic brain, when they're in their comfortable brain, having a conversation saying, hey, here's what does it feel like when you start to have these feelings? There was a young boy at the camp that I worked at this summer who had a lot of feelings bubbling up,
Mm,
um, and to the point where he was in tears frequently. And I had a conversation with him saying, "Where do you feel it? Where do you feel it in your body?" And I could say, I feel that those sort of emotions, here behind my eyes and like here. And he said, I feel it here and in my belly. And he had been having trouble eating. And so just asking the questions like, how do you feel? Where do you feel it? And then talking about discomfort versus the full blown when it's anxiety and you just can't deal anymore. Like having those conversations. Perhaps you as a grown up can go, "Oh yeah, I know when I had like I responded poorly, like my brain shut off and I freaked out. I remember that. Can I tell you that? I'm going to tell you that story." Um so having those conversations. The other thing which I was really excited about is parents um what am I trying to say? Facial expression um is a societal construct. And I had this conversation with my 12-year-old because she has resting sad face. And we figured that out last year because her face, when she's just relaxed, it looks to me, I interpret it as she's in a bad mood or she's sad.
wow.
And I kept asking her if she was okay. And finally she said, "Mom, my teachers are asking me the same thing." She's like, my face is resting." I'm like, "Oh." Like she does not feel a need to be aware of putting this on her face all the time. Isn't that interesting? And so I'm learning from my own children. When I see an expression on someone's face, don't assume.
I love that. I love
Ask.
that. Well, and I think it's really perceptive of
Mhm.
your child who is only 12 to say, "My face is resting."
Right. Right. Well, our
It's
children are
really
amazing.
cool.
Like, all of you, go ask your kids, like, just have lean into conversations with your kids,
Oh.
especially your teenagers. Even the grumpy 15-year-old who's tired and really doesn't want to talk to me right now.
And wants
Really
to
doesn't want
push
to.
you away. They
100%.
want to push you away
Right.
so that they can feel that autonomy, but they
Yeah.
really want to know that you care.
Right. So I have a question for you, Lorraine.
Yeah.
All right. So what might be some steps? There's a question that came to us and I put it in the chat and it showed up in our chat 3 times. But this is something I have heard. This came to us. It's, you know, my kid feels most comfortable at home on her screens. She can control 100% what is happening. Do you have advice? So I'm looking for like, how do you make those small steps with teenagers just into what was the zone? Hold on.
Challenge zone.
The challenge zone.
Yeah. So I think the first thing that I want to recognize is that it feels safe and comfortable until it doesn't. And then your son, child, daughter, whatever is launched into their panic zone because they don't have like the tools or the steps on how to identify that loss of control. And I think that that is such a great question that somebody asked, because it's that feeling of comfortability that is not really comfortable, right? So
That makes so much sense. That makes so much sense. When people are always comfortable, they
mm,
never learn how to deal with the discomfort.
right, and so
And
they are
then
launched into
mhm,
that anxiety and that uncomfortable panic. Um,
interesting.
so I guess, I think what is really important is to ask, like you said, ask some questions.
Mm,
Why do you feel comfortable when you are in your phone and when you're behind that screen? And what does
mhm,
it feel like when you aren't behind your screen? And what are some ways that, or things that you can do that make you feel uncomfortable, but don't make you feel like you are going to lose your mind and feel like your amygdala is in control?
right.
Um, and
I would
so,
love to hear answers to those questions sometime. Like, I'm gonna
uh,
go back and rewatch this and write down everything you said. Because those are great questions.
yes,
Can I give a little tip to parents who are like,
yes,
"I'm too scared to have
please.
these conversations with my kids"?
Yes.
Start writing your children notes, not
Mm,
on a text. You're not texting them. Write it on paper. Start with just little love notes. It's a little like on a post-it, or perhaps you get a special notebook. And in that notebook, you write, this is a notebook just to help us communicate. Um, and then you write a couple like lovely things. I see a young person who um, really enjoys dot dot dot, or is having a hard time with dot dot dot. Um, all of these things. I loved how yesterday this happened for you, and you look so proud of yourself. Love you, parent. Put it
yes.
on your kid's pillow and don't talk to them about it.
I
If
love
you
it.
want it to be a notebook that goes back and forth, great. Say like if there's anything you want to know or you want to write me a little message, write it in here and put it on my pillow. Like if that works for you. For me, it's more like I just like it's like guerrilla love notes. It's just like
Post-it notes, right?
exactly
Post-it note
post-it
on
notes.
the right, and I will tell you from my own experience doing that with
Mhm.
my children, they save them.
Yeah,
They need
yeah,
them, they want
right,
them, they don't know that they want them and need them, but once
right.
you do it, it's
Uh-huh.
like you have just filled a cup. And Molly, I remember a question that was brought to me, um, and
Mm,
probably a little bit more transparent of my own, is you spent a lot of time talking about how to handle this when my teen or
mm,
my child is in that calm place. What
mhm.
if I, as a parent, don't spend a lot of time in my own calm space and like I'm a worrier or I'm having a hard time knowing where my challenge zone and my panic zone is? So, like,
Right.
do you have advice on how I, as a parent, might navigate my own anxiety in dealing with my child?
Well, what a great opportunity to model for your child how you do it. I mean, what an amazing opportunity. Hold on, I wanna go back to the notes real quick, and then I'm coming back to that, and that
Okay.
opportunity that you have. Once you've started doing some of the, like, the happy notes,
Yeah.
you can also then write some of these questions that Lorraine mentioned, go back and
Mm.
rewatch, write some of those down on your Post-its or in the notebook. Written communication back and forth, especially for teenagers and preteens and young adults. I have some of my clients that I work with are trying to enrich their connection to their college children. Um, those written communications uh, are super safe. They're like you're not staring each other in the eye, watching each other's
Mm.
reaction, and so it hits them a different way. It's much less risky. It's much easier. So if you are dealing with your own anxiety and not being in your own calm state, being in your panic state a lot, seriously, what an amazing opportunity to model, to be
Yeah.
transparent, to say things like, oh, I'm feeling all of this discomfort right now. I'm feeling it in my body. Um, or, wow, I think I didn't react real well in that situation. And I wonder if it's because I was so far out of my comfort zone that I was in my panic zone. Could you see that? Oh, you recognized it
Oh.
too? Yeah.
Well, and I
What should
think
I?
it goes back
Mhm,
to your idea of the notes, right? Like if I'm
mhm,
having a hard time navigating a conversation with my teen,
mhm.
if I remember that I have this opportunity to write a note,
Right,
then
right,
there's not that conflict and there's not
right,
that like one up the energy scale. And so I
right,
think that that kind of helps a parent who maybe is navigating their own anxiety.
right.
I think modeling is an excellent tool, working on our own challenges and like demonstrating that.
Yeah,
But also, I think that's another tool that we can leave our audience with is that back and forth notebook, right? So
yeah,
it's not confrontational, there's not building conflict. You can say in the middle of a like with your child, you could say, you know what, I think this might be a place for us to navigate with our notebook
right. Or to
and
or to
stop
just
it right
say
there.
or you just say, "Wow, we are both really upset right now. I'm feeling it. I feel it in my body. I
Yes.
see it in you. We need a minute.
Pause. Yeah.
Yep. Oh, let's come back to this when we are not as upset."
Mm.
I have done that. I've started doing that with my kids. I'm starting to feel actually, I lied. I didn't start it recently. When my daughter was 4 years old, she
Uh-huh.
would not leave the house. "Daughter of mine, put your shoes on. It's time to go. Daughter of mine, it's time to go. Put your shoes on. It's time to go. We're late. Put your shoes on." Say it a million times, and then I would lose it, Lorraine. I would scream at her. I have been the
Yes.
worst person. I've been
We've
at my
been
worst.
there both. Yes,
Yes.
yes, and that's
And I
why
would
I think we
yeah,
make a good example that, like,
right.
we don't claim perfection here. In
No.
fact, we want you to
Uh-huh.
know that perfection is not achievable.
Absolutely. So I'd scream at her, and then I remember she burst into tears. "Mommy, you should use your nice words," or something like that. Your nice voice. and I was still in anger mode, and I yelled back at her, "I used my nice voice 5 times and it didn't work, so you need to listen." I lost it. And then I reflected on it and went, "Oh," what I started doing then is I'd ask her once or twice, and then I would just say, I'd say, "I'm starting to feel like I'm getting angry, so pretty soon the angry voice is gonna come out." And she would get her stuff on because she did not like the angry voice, and I didn't like the angry voice. But so I try to do that with my teenagers a little bit, like, "Listen, I understand that you're exhausted because you're working at a outdoor summer camp during the day," my 15-year-old, "and you're in a play rehearsal at night until 10 o'clock. Like, you've chosen to do this. I understand you're exhausted, but you're responding to me." You see me breathe?
Yes.
Take a breath, parents. "But the way you're responding to me is really starting to bother me. I need a minute.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
can't handle this right now." So, and also what a great model of when you're starting to lose it, disengage.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
our youth need that model. So,
Yeah.
I had
I'd
a
love
question for you. Yeah,
I'd
go
love
ahead.
for you to throw up the offer that we wanna share
Yeah.
with audience members.
Yes, let me put that up right now. Yes, because we understand that in this conversation here, this live webinar, we can touch on a couple little things, the tip of the iceberg, right?
Yes.
Um, yeah, the absolute tip of the iceberg. And what we wanted to offer anyone who is watching this, either now or in the replay, is a coffee talk, free 30
Yes.
minutes with the both of us,
Yeah.
with both of us. And the way we're going to set it up is watch for an email from us. So those of you who pre-registered, or if you can register afterwards, watch for an email. If you have not registered, which means we don't have your contact information, please send us a message. We
Yeah.
can get you set up. I mean, can you imagine 30 minutes free, talk to us, we'll be like, "What's going
Ask
on
us
with
your
your
question.
kids?"
Yes,
And
yes.
just let us brainstorm with you. Just let us go. We will
Yeah.
have a heck of a good time. So grab a screen grab of that if you're watching right now, and send us an email. But I know I just want to keep talking and talking, but let me quick look at our notes and make sure.
I
Have
mean,
we?
I think part of the issue is that there's so much to talk about,
Right,
and
right,
maybe if we get some good responses and requests, maybe we'll host another one. And if people
right.
are interested and have found this to be valuable, we would love to know and
Yeah,
make a comment below or send us an email, because Molly and I love to talk about the things that we are passionate about, much like you
it's true.
probably like to talk about in general, our audience. But it's important to know that we're reaching and we're hitting the things that you guys are interested in learning about for our kids,
Yeah,
especially as we step back to school. You know, I think a lot of our kids are going to be exhibiting those anxiety and those panic modes, and like being able to have that common language and say, how was your first day at school? How much of the
I
time
love
did
that.
you spend in panic? Because if you can just focus on decreasing that number, or start
Mhm.
with how much time did you spend in your comfort zone, and how much time could you like switch them. I think it's really important for kids, especially in the beginning of school, to spend
Mhm.
more time in their comfort zone, because then they're going to start to feel more comfortable at school and be willing to take those risks into their challenge zone. If they walk into a classroom and they feel completely out of their comfort zone right from the beginning, then it's going to be hard to get them to come back into that zone
Right,
of
right.
learning.
And asking questions like that where, it's there's not an emotional like a strong emotional connection,
Yes.
to the answer for both parent or child.
Yes, yes, yes,
Asking
yes.
questions like that also, it does this. I know we're gonna go soon, but I just need to get this bit in.
Yeah.
It connects to the amygdala. Remember how I mentioned that the amygdala is like fight or flight? It's also the place that, in the brain, that when it feels taken care of, when
Mm.
the person feels taken care of by their caregiver, right? Their parent, it actually tells the body, tells the glands to send out like those happy, relax, like
Ooh,
oxytocin and serotonin,
the
all those good
reward
chemicals.
hormones. Yeah.
Exactly. And so that makes them go, oh, and any stress chemicals that have been washing through their body start to be released when the amygdala is like, oh, my adult is asking me these questions. They see me, they hear
Mm,
me. And it's not just, hey, good job today. It's like, hey, how much of the day were you like in your comfort zone? Tell me about that. Mm,
yeah.
were there times where you weren't? Was it just a little bit? Was it just discomfort? Or did it go all the way to you just sat in the back of the room? My daughter still wears her mask to school because she doesn't want people looking at her. Like she
Mm,
wears it has nothing to do with the pandemic anymore. It's just comfort. She quite literally is hiding behind her mask and her hair's in her face.
mm.
And I know when she's getting comfortable in a situation because the mask comes off. Yeah.
Wow.
So asking questions like that, oh, did the mask come off at any point? Oh, at
Ooh,
lunch with your friends? Really? What were you talking about? Things like that.
yeah.
So,
I love it.
thank you everyone for this time together. Um, I think we've said plenty. I could definitely keep talking, but we're going to save it for our 30-minute coffee talks.
Love it.
Any last words, Miss Lorraine?
I think just being that model, working on yourself, learning the things that, and using that to help build that conversation and
Mhm.
always ask questions.
Yes, children absolutely want to be able to support us as well and to give us grace when we are
Mhm.
having trouble. We give them grace and they can give us grace. So it is okay to not be the perfect strong parent who never shows any weakness.
Yes.
It's good
Amen.
to see. All right. Take good care everybody. See you on the flip side, right?
Yeah.
We are not in this alone. We got you. We're in this together. Bye.
Bye.